Hello and welcome back to the Saturday edition of News from Kazakhstan on K+. I'm Asghar Sharif and these are the top stories collected by our reporters over the last 24 hours. Facebook, Twitter and even Google are named co-defendants in the lawsuit by Kazakhstan's state prosecutor seeking to shut down some 40 media outlets and opposition organizations in the country. In the meantime, the first casualty of this latest freedom of information attack, a newspaper Golos Respubliki, went down late in the week after facing swift court action and immediate ban on publication.
This issue of the Golos Respubliki newspaper is likely to become final. On November 21st, the Medeo District Court issued a decree for suspension of issuance and distribution of the independent publication. Just like the previous newspaper editions, the last one was printed and shipped from abroad, as none of the Kazakhstan printing offices would take the risk of engaging in typography of the dissenting periodical. This time no one expected the issue would make it through the airport customs to get to the reader. However, the consignment delivery was smooth as ever. Finding the general prosecution lawsuit appeared to be quite a piece of work for the lawyers. They were calling around the local and regional courts just to stumble on negative answers. The lawsuit was dated November 20th, the order was issued on the 21st, and I received the documents on the 22nd. However, when I called the court administration office on November 21st, I was told that the lawsuit did not exist. One day appeared to be enough for the court to issue the decree. However, the lawyer Sergei Utkin seemed puzzled at the prosecutor's claimed content. The regulatory authority representatives referred to all the Respublika publications as a single mass media, which is considered quite misleading by the expert. Besides, the respondent party is represented by the newspaper itself instead of the publisher. However, the most unexpected part was the list of defendant internet publishers, including the well-known social networks Facebook and Twitter. They're trying to hold major foreign internet resources such as Google liable to the case. I'm not sure if Google knows that they're being prosecuted in Kazakhstan, but that is sure to become sensational news here. Head of Adil Söz Foundation, Tamara Kaleva, is also surprised by the actions of the Public Prosecution Office. I think it's about time for the public prosecution to take into account the country's honor and dignity and stop tainting its international standing by such kind of ignorant and legally unsound campaigns. They did nothing but demean the country. The chief editor of the Golos Respubliki newspaper, Tatyana Trubacheva, is still under the impression from the rash public prosecutor's decree. She stated that the National Security Committee and representatives of public prosecution deprived the editorial board of every opportunity of self-defense. Publications were subjected to examination during the politician Vladimir Kozlov's case trial, bypassing the editorial office, thus divorcing them of a right to ask questions and appeal against the expert conclusions. The lawsuit implies we have already been charged with extremist activities by the enforced judgment on Kozlov's case. However, they are not intending to provide any evidence or expert examination results. We were not even informed about the formal investigation our publications were subjected to. The first hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, November 27th. So far, no one knows how much time the trial can take. Curiously enough, 15 minutes before the start of the conference, National Press Club was faced with a blackout. Another coincidence was the power supply restored after the public speakings were over.
It took Almaty's courts only a few days to process the state prosecutor's now infamous lawsuit against media publications deemed extremist. At the same time, it seems that no one has actually seen the mysterious document itself, as all attempts of public activists and reporters to get hold of it were in vain.
Al-Ha party activists came to the prosecutor's office to see the lawsuit based on which the movement Khalik Maidani and dozens of mass media may be labeled extremist and banned in Kazakhstan. I personally want to get an insight into the case. I want to take a copy of the claim, read it, and then make conclusions accordingly. The police did not want to let the unexpected visitors in. They were confused by the balloons and banners reading "Away with extremism." You cannot just snatch and take that away from people's hands. That is not acceptable. You cannot do this. You must be ashamed of yourself. People from the prosecutor's office finally let two representatives in and told them that they could collect a copy of the document in court. The prosecutor's office brought a civil suit against us. I want to say that our troubles are yet ahead. I would like to invite you all to join me and come to Medeo Court at 10 o'clock Monday morning. We will try and make ourselves aware of this mysterious document. Natalia Sotbaeva, a lawyer with Stan Internet Portal, spent all Friday searching for the document. She went to both Almaty District and Economic Court. None of them had the claim from the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor's office told that they sent the lawsuit to the court. It needs to be there. It is now a big question whether we're getting the right information. It was only in the evening when one of the employees with the city prosecutor's office told the lawyer that the lawsuit has been passed to Almaty District Court. To recap, on November 20th, the prosecutor's office in Almaty initiated a lawsuit labeling the opposition party Alga and movement Khalik Maidani as extremist. The lawsuit also called for banning newspapers Respublika and Vzгляд, shutting down K+ channel, Stan website, and a number of other internet resources.
Quite expectedly, Kazakhstan's opposition and media advocates are most vocal about the authorities' latest attempt to put enormous pressure on the remaining independent press. On Friday, however, it appeared that even members of parliament loyal to the state, as well as constitutional chairman himself, are questioning the extremism accusations.
Almaty prosecutor's lawsuit against opposition media surprised the MP Aygul Solovyova. She explains the constitution clearly states that Kazakhstan supports freedom of speech and the rule of international standards. The official says the prosecutor's office knows it perfectly, but nevertheless it brought suits against them. The basis for the claim raises many questions, even for the MP from the faction in power. I don't know the level of expertise of the person who conducted this assessment, but it is necessary that the public has to access this expertise to evaluate whether those illegitimate calls took place. Even for professionals with vast and extensive experience, it is very difficult to give such assessment on this matter. If the court finds legal inconsistencies in the claim, the case will be sent to the Constitutional Council for review. So far, its chairman refused to comment on the incident. Igor Rogov does not deny that some media resources are really dangerous, but he did not indicate which ones. The official says he is not fond of the opposition press, and so far he read it only once. They brought me an article about me, so I read it and found they were wrong, so I wrote them saying that I do not agree with them. So did you find any signs of extremism there? I wrote only the piece about me and I did not see extremism there. I noticed only distortion. Chairman of the Commission on Human Rights under the President and concurrently MP Kuanish Sultanov literally ran away from questions about unwanted media sources. No, I am in a hurry. I cannot speak shortly on matters like this. Is it an inconvenient question for you? No, it is quite a normal question. Well, why don't you share your opinion then? I'm sorry, but it is wrong to catch people off guard. Meanwhile, the Almaty prosecutors even went further by adding Google, Facebook, and Twitter to the list of respondent parties in the opposition media banning lawsuit. However, internet resources have not yet responded to the claim.
The absurdity of the current situation with the prosecutor's media lawsuit and the recent trial of Vladimir Kozlov, who was found guilty of inciting social hatred based on seemingly superficial evidence, was exposed on Friday using a regular mobile phone as an example.
A social activist from the Semey branch of the political party Alga tried to find out whether Nokia mobile phones have an extremist subtext in their menu and whether their owners are dangerous. Fatima Kasyanova read a message in social networks. It says Nokia mobile phone has some elements of extremism. In particular, the function regime or mode change has been revealed. The leader of the party, Alga Vladimir Kozlov, was convicted of such a charge. The woman filed a claim to the city attorney. She asked him to take all appropriate measures concerning Nokia mobile phones to prevent a possible change of the constitutional order. Since prosecutors treat media laws as well as laws on public organizations and the rights and freedoms of a man so moronically and perversely, I would like to address a letter to the prosecutor to clarify the following. As an owner of a Nokia mobile phone which has the function regime change, shall I be arrested under Article 170 Part 2? Kozlov was arrested under the very article. However, the prosecutors could not offer any evidence of his guilt in the trial.
Activists of Kazakhstan's popular protest movements also extend their support to the independent media and political organizations facing prosecutors' ban. On Friday, they've gathered to discuss the quickly deteriorating situation with the state's handling of the post-mortgage crisis that already resulted in several suicide attempts and actual death.
The activists of Leave Housing to the People Association are going to appeal to the president and the parliament. People are demanding for immediate intervention of the authorities into a situation with mortgage borrowers. Due to financial hardships, many of them cannot pay off the loans, while regulated banks are not willing to make concessions. It got to the point of people committing suicides. In February 2012, Almaty resident Yerken Adilkhan took his life. He had a debt of $50,000 for the purchased housing. The activists of Leave Housing to the People intend to inform the country leadership about this particular case and the issue in general. About 100 borrowers officials laid down two basic demands. First of all, to have the government develop a special state program for the crisis-affected mortgage holders. The second demand is to let people keep their only housing under any circumstances in order to preserve the family as a social unit and foundation of the state. Moreover, the following statement made during the meeting, the socialist movement expresses support for the pending registration party, Alga, Coalition Halik Maidani, and independent media. Activists demand to discontinue persecution of public organizations and oppose to the closure of publications. Furthermore, the socialist movement insists on fair investigations of convicted oil workers' case and invites all democratic groups of Kazakhstan to unite in a single coalition of protecting the rights and freedoms.
To the other news, the unexpectedly bizarre trial of bodyguard Vladislav Chelakh, accused of killing 14 fellow soldiers and a forest ranger, continued on Friday in Taldykorgan. On November 21st, the defendant attempted to cut his wrists with the edge of his seat right in the courtroom, while yesterday he said his further participation in the rest of the trial will be extremely limited.
Defendant Chelakh, as requested by representatives of the victims and your mother, you were brought to the courtroom to participate in the trial. The court ruled to have you present during the hearing. Yet another move by Vladislav Chelakh. The private was brought into the courtroom, however, he refused to participate in the fifth hearing. Chelakh specified that he agrees to give public testimony later and to hear the verdict after that. Your Honor, you're violating my rights now. Your Honor. I announce a recess to secure the defendant. The attorney Sarsenov, I authorize you to conduct the defendant of his rights to participate in the hearing. Please rise. Attorney Serek Sarsenov ignores the behavior of his client. However, he stresses the fact that all of his petitions and questions are rejected, as opposed to those of the prosecutor. What is a dodgy enterprise, really? Should any officer of justice take offense, let them look it up in the Facebook. It seems like they want to hold me somewhat liable for using such wording in the statements. In the second half of the hearing, the judge suddenly interrupted the viewing of another tape with videos about Chelakh and proceeded to the examination of witnesses. After watching the video yesterday, I thought Chelakh did indeed commit the crime, but after I watched more today, I think he could not have done it alone. The absence of the defendant at the hearings and all the details about Arkankirgan massacre from the video conversation between Chelakh and his cellmate exacerbate the situation. Many relatives of the victims no longer believe in Chelakh's innocence. In fact, some of them even desire vengeance. This criminal should be killed. We request the judge to let us judge him ourselves. We will eat him by pieces. What would you get out of murdering Vladislav Chelakh? He enjoyed doing what he has done. Now we would enjoy it as well. On Friday, over a dozen more witnesses underwent questioning and 2 more tapes of investigative experiment materials were reviewed. The wife of the murdered captain, Altunbek Kireev, withdrew her claim for compensation of moral damages. The hearing will continue on Monday.
Another high-profile trial, this time of the 37 oil workers charged with starting violent riots in the city of Zhanaozen last December, is back in spotlight. After the passing of the verdict, several of sentenced defendants attempted to launch their own litigations against law enforcement authorities, accusing them of using extreme torture during the pre-trial investigation.
The Mangkhtar Regional Court once again refused to initiate criminal proceedings on tortures of Zhanaozen mass disorders case convicts. The judge dismissed the case as barred by time. The previous DIA and municipal court rejection was appealed by the lawyer Gulnar Zhuazbayeva on behalf of her clients Roza Tulitaeva and Maksadas Makhambetov. She insisted on the investigation of unlawful torture and ill-treatment occurrence during the oilers' interrogation. Now that another petition has been rejected, the lawyer intends to address the UN Committee Against Torture. The court would always opt for a summary dismissal due to procedural omissions rather than spend time trying on a complaint. If they made an effort to examine the claim on its substance, it would become obvious that we are right, as there is nothing but the oilers' explanatory reports. Social activists Roza Tulitaeva and Maksadas Makhambetov claimed they were subjected to unlawful actions. In particular, the strike activist Tulitaeva told that she was hung by her hair and suffocated in a plastic bag in compulsion to testify. However, at the time, the public prosecution did not find enough evidence to support the complaint.
Who do people trust in Kazakhstan, especially when it comes down to the well-being of their loved ones? Faced with insurmountable financial troubles, families often turn to private funds and organizations, but unfortunately, some of them appear to be not what they seemed initially.
One of Pavlodar's charity funds is suspected of fraud. Several citizens filed a claim to the prosecutor's office. They accuse the fund of embezzling donations. 7-year-old Sasha is a cheerful and smiling child. For several years, his parents have been trying to bring him back to normal life. The boy has suffered from a locomotor system disease since birth. The boy can hardly speak since he suffers from a speech disorder. 6 months ago, Sasha needed surgery. His family contacted the charity fund Tvaritelь for financial support. The administration of the fund promised to help Sasha. They told that the fund receives donations from sponsors and concerned residents. However, they did not keep their promise. Later, it turned out that Sasha was not the only one who was promised financial support but was not paid for the surgery. Thus, his family doubted the fund's charitable activity and filed a petition to the Prosecutor General's office. We filed a claim to the Prosecutor General's office to find out whether this fund is really involved in charitable activity or just deceives ordinary people. The administration of the fund promised financial support, however, we got nothing. The prosecutor's office accepted the claim. Yesterday it was being considered by financial police. However, prosecutors need more time to reveal whether the charity fund is deceiving ordinary people. A legal decision has not yet been made. Once all circumstances are fully and objectively clarified, the financial police can give a procedural evaluation of the fund's activity. The administration of the charity fund Tvaritelь does not avoid reporters. The top manager says she has never cheated anybody. The organization cannot render their financial support to everybody at once. Thus, she asks the people to wait. I would like to appeal to the people who accuse me of breaking my promise to render financial support. We raise money. Everything we promised will be done. The charity fund Tvaritelь has been working for a year and a half. The administration has managed to find several sponsors who paid for the surgery of seriously ill people. Moreover, the fund has bought 2 wheelchairs by voluntary contributions.
Another potential brick in the wall of the president's personality cult was laid on Friday in Astana, this time at the expense of Kazakhstan's veterans. The event, with the sole purpose of praising the head of state 1 week before the new holiday, the day of the first president, was remarkably similar in nature to the apparatchik gatherings of the country's Soviet past.
On the eve of the first Kazakhstan President's Day, the Capital Veterans Council members gathered to discuss Nursultan Nazarbayev's phenomenon. A few hundred of the respected elderly came to the Palace of Peace and Consent to express their admiration for the political stronghold. One cannot do justice to the monumental efforts of the man who changed the course of history and development for the whole nation. The most important achievement for us is obtaining freedom to start a business, engage in entrepreneurship, publish, watch or read anything we like, and practice any religion. The president set the Kazakh people free. Quite a while back, MP Vladimir Yakharoshev declared his absolute trust in the president's effulgence. His former deputy colleague Zauria Kadyrova went even further by attributing the leader of the nation with extrasensory perception. The president boasts powerful intuition. He carefully thinks over every state program by kind of letting it flow through his heart. He has a rare ability to foresee, which makes him an outstanding leader. Meanwhile, the old and wise Moisey Goldberg put his faith in the president's decency. He's convinced that the leader of the nation will stand the test of people's love without turning it into a personality cult. He knows the difference between a personality cult and the people's respect. I believe he should respond to people with an equal grade of respect. The Tribune speeches basically repeated behind-the-scene interviews. The old generation of Kazakhstan citizens does not demonstrate much of a creative approach to December 1st. Instead, they rather prefer to quote the time-tested declamation stating that the national leader's strategy advanced the country to the forward position. No, the greatest achievements result from the president's wisdom.
With a lot of government's efforts to give science top priority, infuse major funding into research and promote local universities internationally, one would think Kazakhstan's students would not need any additional motivation staying in their line of work. Alas, a recent conference in Almaty seems to prove otherwise.
At the conference of young scientists and innovators, the scholars tried to motivate students to keep their interest in science. Of course, salary and funding are important, but one still has to serve the country, the professors hinted from the Tribune. The most important is to have a warm corner in one's heart for science and young people, regardless of the financial situation, which is of course also a determining factor. Most importantly, you love your work, profession, science, and do everything for the sake of our country. These chemists have been sticking to this guideline at their work long ago. According to Azamat Kalak, water filters mainly used by gas and car service stations clear contaminated water from oil products. The contaminated water goes through a full decontamination process which separates water from oil products, thus the water flows into the sewage system in a clean state. Girlfriends Alina and Dina decided to challenge the innovation. They've been out of school for long and feel bored to work for someone. The young women created 3 new internet projects: an online booking service for beauty salons, an online healthy meal delivery service, as well as packages with different shapes for decorations of cakes and pies. Future entrepreneurs believe that their ideas will help them win the grant. We understand that everyone starts a business to make a profit rather than just for good cause. We believe that online booking service for beauty salon has its own formed market. Many professors already noted that 1 out of 3 students is ready to stay in school to study science further. Now the professors have to help the future scientists how to apply science in business.
Speaking of science and motivation, an entire new study complex was opened in Almaty on Friday. The attendance of similar facilities, however, remains very low, even in major cities with extended museum networks. People prefer entertainment to their education, although interestingly, the popularity of exhibits dedicated to the first president of the country remains near all-time high.
The scientific center Gulim Ordasi is now in Almaty after renovation. It consists of 4 museums. One of them has 200 exotic plants brought for a winter garden. The museums of archaeology, nature, and rare books acquired new exhibits. The overall repair cost a budget of almost $666,000. For instance, 8 months ago there were only 100 white books in the Museum of Rare Books and there were 4 empty offices, whereas now we have over 1,000 valuable books at the museum. Think about it, 100 books versus 1,000. Despite the uniqueness of the event, there aren't so many visitors at the Museums of Rare Books and Archaeological Findings. The crowd is composed of employees and reporters. There are at least 20 to 30 visitors here daily. The majority of them are pupils and students. Adults rarely visit. In fact, our museum is yet unknown. It is quite different at the museum dedicated to the first president of Kazakhstan. This Friday was an excursion for first graders. They already know the national leader's biography by heart. Nursultan Nazarbayev was born on July 6, 1940. In Shamalghan village of Almaty region. Public official of Kazakhstan. While the kids review the exhibits, adults on the streets of the cultural center of the country hardly recall when was the last time they visited the museum. The last time I visited a museum is when I was a student. It was a Russian museum in Moscow. Nowadays I have no time for this. I am busy with work and kids. I haven't visited a museum in 6 months. We usually go to the Central Museum of Kunaev. I've been to the museum in Taraz, but not in Almaty, and that was back in high school. Now I work, and I have no time for this. 20-year-old Yerjan sells doners. He arrived in Kazakhstan from Turkey 7 years ago. In all these years, he never managed to visit a single museum. I've been to a museum in Turkey when I was a kid. Since I came to Kazakhstan, I have not visited one yet. I have no time for this. It should be noted that Kazakh museums do not stand a chance against the internet and other entertainment of the 21st century. 160 museums in Almaty alone are on standby for visitors.
Elsewhere, a competition among transit and taxi cab companies was launched in the city of Semey in an attempt to improve the overall service quality and likely to raise the profile of over a dozen local transportation businesses.
Over the next 5 months, Semey residents will bear witness and even take part in the contest for titles the Best Conductor and Best Driver, organized by the owners of the private transportation company. We will take into account traffic violations and feedback of the residents and guests of Semey City. With this goal in mind, we gave a formal statement to the media and advertised telephone numbers where the residents and guests of Semey can call to report their claims on the drivers who work on these routes. Passengers served by dozens of private transportation companies feel positive about the contest and already feel ready to share their demands, claims and wishes with the organizers. I wish they were more customer-oriented and avoided the overload of passengers. Also, it would be nice if they had courteous service. I believe for the organizers of the contest, as well as the management of transportation company, it would be more important to pay attention to the discipline of their drivers, the service of their conductors, who still have room for improvement.
This is it for this week. Make sure to tune in on Monday for Vlaski Z with the analysis of events in the past 7 days. Thank you for joining us today. Have a great weekend.